Legend has it that it was written by the Dark Ones. Necronomicon ex mortis. Roughly translated, Book of the Dead. The book served as a passageway to the evil worlds beyond. It was written long ago, when the seas ran red with blood.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of N1's Kin. This week we are going to get a little scared, we're going to laugh a lot, and we're going to see what caused all of the superhero movies to suddenly become a thing. I'm James, as always. I will be handling the topic this week. I am joined by Robert.
Hello.
And Veet.
Hello, hello.
So, let's go ahead and talk about the week that was. How is your week, Robert?
My week has been somewhat uneventful, but also awesome. I've been using my Cintiq more and more. I'm not feeling nearly as sick. Still a little sick, but not nearly so much. And I've already seen 10 Cloverfield Lane twice because it's awesome and you should go.
Oh, wow. I haven't seen it. I didn't even realize that it was out. I've been busy.
Well, it's just one of those things that's kind of funny. I mean, in January, you're going about your business, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, J.J. Abrams has produced a Cloverfield sequel in total secret. And it's like, what? It comes out in 3 months. What? Ooh, must go. And it was good. It was very good.
It wasn't secret, wasn't it? It just appeared out of nowhere.
Yep, completely out of the blue. Bam! Movie! And it's like, holy crap! And it stars John Goodman and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Oh, gotta go to this.
It dropped like a Beyonce album, just out of nowhere.
But it's very good. The less you know about it going into it, as usual, the better. Fantastic film. I really, really like it. And John Goodman probably gave one of the better performances he's ever given. So
yeah, I love John Goodman. I have always loved John Goodman.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's terrific in this movie. Absolutely fantastic.
All right, that sounds awesome. Sounds like something I need to get out and do. So, Veet, how's your week been?
My week's been great. Busy as always. Made a small investment in a new microphone, so hopefully everybody can enjoy my dulcet tones just that little better.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Good. I'm glad. I did come home from work the other day to find my wife and daughter letting me know that they recorded something for me on the DVR from the morning's New Zealand morning television. And I'm wondering, what could this be? So they play it for me, and so unbeknownst to me, when we did the Thunderbirds Go episode, Weta Workshop had 2 weeks earlier announced that they had made their sets available to the general public. They've basically created the Thunderbirds Go experience. You can go down to their studios in Wellington and wander through all the model sets that they've created.
Nice.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it's just it's there right in front of you. You're within touching range. And they've got people they'll walk you through it and explain, how the different angles and what they try to achieve. The bigger sets are for details, the smaller sets are for your long shots and so forth. And they had Sir Richard Taylor, who's the creative director from Weta Workshop, taking them through it, explaining some of the detail. And I'm looking doughy-eyed at Claire, and she's nodding at me, going, "Yes, we'll get down to Wellington. We'll go have a look."
Yes.
And then he announced that just this week, US television and Japanese television have picked up the Thunderbirds Go television program.
Oh,
we
man.
are damn near prophetic. We are in range with all of the cosmic wavelengths.
Yep. So they're really excited about going to the Japanese market because, the original Thunderbirds was huge in Japan. And obviously, the big money's in the US. And I'm sitting there going, that's just wonderful news. And it's great to know that our small podcast had played a part in that, because I know for certain that US TV executives and Japanese TV executives sat through our podcast and said, what are we doing not having this show in our country?
Yep, you're welcome.
I like to know that it's good to know that we've had an impact so early in our podcasting career. So, yes, it's been a great week.
Okay, yeah.
Humble brag.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah, just a small brag. That's all.
Oh, man, that's great. So, my week has been a lot like last week. Pinky tried to take over a job, but in the meantime, I got to do a lot of research on our topic, which was fun. And it culminated in my niece jumping up while I was watching Spider-Man 2 and screaming, "No, Mr. Robot!" And I said, "No, that's Spider-Man." And she said, "No, that's a robot." And so Spider-Man is now Mr. Robot. And she got upset when, at the beginning of Spider-Man 2, Peter is trying to deliver the pizza, and he leaves it on the corner of the balcony, and the guy takes a slice. She was really upset by the fact that Spider-Man took that pizza away from him. So, bad Mr. Robot.
How old's your niece?
She is 2.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Fair enough.
Yep. So,
yeah.
All she saw was pizza theft.
Yeah, she saw a blue and red man stealing pizza. She jumped up, screamed, "No, Mr. Robot."
And an android Spider-Man.
Yep, I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, well, maybe in Civil War he will be kind of a robot.
Oh, did you guys catch that trailer?
Exactly, what I was moving into. So the trailer
Okay, go for it.
For Captain America Civil War, it showed Spider-Man. Oh my God, I freaked out. I really did freak out. It's got me super excited for a movie that I was not that excited for, but it's completely based on bias, just because Spider-Man's my favorite.
Gotcha.
And
I was going to say, continue.
Oh no, I was just saying I loved everything about it, even though it was short. I loved the costume design. I'm happy for it. It does feel kind of weird because we're on basically back-to-back remakes of Spider-Man, because it's the Sam Raimi Spider-Man, which we'll talk about today, and then I just forgot who made Amazing Spider-Man. I apologize to you.
Webb,
yes. And then
ironic name.
Yeah, and now we're on a third Spider-Man, probably.
Yeah, it's the third one. He's a total reboot.
It's so...
At least this time, the suit is designed by Tony Stark, so we can actually explain how a kid gets this badass suit.
Yep. Although it's not the Iron Spider suit.
I wouldn't want it to be Iron Spider.
Yeah, that one was a little too gaudy.
But it is Peter Parker, right? Or is it
It's Peter Parker.
All right.
No, we can actually go into all this because Sam Raimi has a direct result on why Spider-Man is the current situation that it's in. The only thing I will say, since we're talking about that trailer, is I really want Captain America Civil War to be good, but just putting it out there, Civil War is just behind One More Day for my least favorite Marvel story arcs ever.
Oh.
I hate Civil War so much, and it bothered the hell out of me. At least with this movie, the premise is completely different as far as to why they're doing these things and how they're going to go about it, who's on the teams and whatnot, blah, 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 blah. I just, there were things about that comic arc that bothered the hell out of me. I mean, Tony Stark was practically a fascist, like just straight up throughout the entire thing. Spider-Man was on both sides because everybody gets to have Spider-Man. You know, it was just ridiculous. And then, of course, it led directly into One More Day. So everything about it just makes me want to like set the world on fire. But you know, whatever. Let's continue.
Well, the trailer certainly did what it needed to do for me. It just got me excited, and I just can't wait.
Yep,
I'm excited
too.
and I can't wait. I want Spider-Man in the MCU. Are you kidding?
Oh yeah, which will be a good thing. Hopefully we can get it back into the fold.
Yeah, we'll talk about that today. That's one of the
Yep.
things I want to talk about.
So today's topic, which I will bear the burden. Not really. So today's topic is Sam Raimi, the man himself, and his filmography, which is all over the place. He has directed a Western, a dramatic neo-noir crime drama, a gritty pulp comic book that he invented. It's basically just the Invisible Man, kinda. And Spider-Man and horror movies. He's everywhere. And it's fascinating because of how he ends up in this place. So Sam Raimi, for me, would be the person who is the most influential director who I've ever watched. And it's not because of some sort of mystical genius. It's not due to some Kubrick-like quality where every scene is some kind of gift to mankind. The thing about Sam Raimi, when I was watching Evil Dead as a kid, because I had a mother who predominantly watched horror films, so I grew up as a baby watching horror movies. And the thing that struck me watching Sam Raimi was that there are times when you watch a TV show or a movie and you go, well, I could do that. I could have done that. I do that all the time. But for Sam Raimi, it was the first time I watched something and I went, I want to do that. I could tell that there was something different about his cinematography that I wasn't seeing with other filmmakers. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that Raimi didn't really have formal cinema training. He didn't grow up in Hollywood. He didn't get some kind of crazy start in Hollywood. Or, he didn't start up in Hollywood. He didn't come from an education of films. He just wanted to make movies. And he dropped out of college, took the money for his college, bought a business suit, and started walking around like he was already in Hollywood in Detroit. And just walked up to people asking if they would fund his movie. So already from the get-go, he is not approaching this in any standard format. And I could immediately tell by watching him that there was a personality to the camera. So most directors want to give you a scene, they create their composition, and then they let it happen in front of a camera. They record that, and then you edit it. Sam Raimi's films always have an extra character, and that's the camera itself. The way he films his action sequences, the camera itself is a faceless character. And it has always fascinated me by the technique that he used. Because he was a guy that wouldn't set up a camera. He would bolt it to something and throw it. He would strap it to a motorcycle. He would bolt it to the top of his car and drive through the woods. There was always a certain physicality in his camera that I had never encountered at the time, and it left an impression on me my entire life. To the fact that, like, for projects for school, we had like a project to do horror, and the challenge was you have to do horror, but it's shot in the middle of the day. That was the teacher's challenge. Shoot a short horror clip in the middle of a bright, open day. And my classmates were having trouble trying to figure out how to do spooky stuff. I said, give me the camera. And I Sam-cammed the hell out of this video, We made it black and white, and my professor told me it was one of the best student projects he had ever seen. And it was terrifying because of the things that I learned by watching Sam Raimi.
Cool.
So, yes, as you can tell, I can go on about Sam Raimi. I absolutely adore everything he's done in the purest nerd form possible.
You're absolutely dead on with how the camera work in his movies is wildly unique. I mean, there is nothing else like it. If you know what you're looking for, it just screams his style. It's almost impossible to mistake one of the movies that he makes as anyone else's.
And the funny thing is, so I was trying to break down what makes his camera work so unique. And a lot of it has to deal with the fact that Hollywood at the time had grown to make Hollywood cinema. Sam Raimi's movies are really close to modern vaudeville. It's almost as if the camera is Buster Keaton. It's jumping and flipping and moving, and it's setting the action by being a key part of the scene. It's very vaudeville, which is why when he switches over to comedy, there are lots of callbacks to things like the Three Stooges. Lots of gags and scenes where if you replaced it with the Three Stooges, it would just be one of their scenes.
Well, that's also in his horror films as well. I mean, Evil Dead 2 has a sequence where it's just like, oh, that could be Three Stooges.
Yes, and so you have Sam Raimi, this unique setting, guy from the Midwest, growing up. He makes a movie called Evil Dead. And it's 1981, and it's the full feature film version of a movie that he made when he was younger, or not younger, it was in 78. It was called Within the Woods. And this is the full feature length version of that. And Evil Dead is a movie where a group of friends go into the woods to this cabin to party and do teenager stuff, discover recordings of this man talking about this book he found, the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, the Book of the Dead. Which is, if I'm not mistaken, an H.P. Lovecraft creation.
Yes, it is the Book of Cthulhu, if I'm not mistaken.
So you have this Lovecraftian book, and the man who's on these old tapes starts reading out these ancient Latin words, or I think Arabic, is what it's actually, the Necronomicon is based in. So reads this, and literally all hell breaks loose. And throughout this movie, his friends get possessed by this evil force. He ends up they get killed, then they come back to life. He has to kill them again. And even then, they're not really dead. It's an awful series of events in which it's a situation where a normal person would go insane because you're having to kill your girlfriend, and then you have to kill her again, and then she's still taunting you while she's dead. It's neat.
It's real life.
Yeah, and it's...
Yeah, I did that last week, man.
It's pretty good for a first attempt at film. It ended up getting an X rating in Europe, which is hilarious, and was actually a really high-grossing X-rated film, which is hilarious because X rating is anathema. And I'm moving through the first movie.
Hang on. No. What do you mean by anathema?
X rating is basically it's the scarlet letter of film ratings.
All right.
Do not watch this, because a lot of times X rating is reserved for very pornographic stuff. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
it retains this stigma. X means there's going to be lots of hardcore sex, even though that's not what it really was. His was cartoonish like gore that is no way believable. So at the end, I'm moving through the first movie kind of fast because there's a lot of stuff we have to get through. And it's the second movie where you see Sam Raimi come into himself. And I'm not trying to downplay this first movie. It is ridiculous how the first movie comes about. He gets the money to make it. They go to Tennessee to this crappy cabin that has, it's one of those, it's a dark history. People have actually died here. They live in the cabin with no heat in the winter, and they stay there for 14 months filming their first movie. It is rough. And Sam Raimi as a director is not afraid to hurt his actors and actresses. There is a scene in the first movie where the evil force, which is portrayed from the camera's viewpoint, crashes through a window to get to one of the actresses. It's him really throwing the camera through the window and real glass flying at her face. He had no qualms or fear about the physicality of what he was doing. There is a point where Bruce Campbell sprains his ankle, and instead of taking him to the doctor, every day before shooting, Sam Raimi had found a stick and he would jab Bruce Campbell in the ankle so that he would actually limp on screen.
Nice.
So there's this charm to him, but there's also this morbidity, this glee he takes in violence, not just in cinema violence, but actually hurting people.
Okay.
It's true.
So he's this mild-mannered dude who, if you've acted for him, will push you to the limit and is not afraid. Like, if you get hurt, he thinks he's done his job, which is kind of crazy. So I'm not downplaying Evil Dead 1, but Evil Dead 2 is where you see him. He gets a proper budget. He goes through and makes what he would consider, or what Hollywood would consider, a proper film. And it's funny because the stigma of the X rating that he got from the first movie, he creates a fake company called Rosebud Entertainment so that he can push the film unrated, because he knows it would get an X rating again, and he wants to avoid that. So he creates a fake company called Rosebud Entertainment to make the second one. Well, there were so many licensing deals that were caught up in the first movie that he couldn't secure the rights to the first movie. So the second movie is him basically doing a proper remake of Evil Dead 2, or of Evil Dead 1. And this is where you see Sam Raimi really playing up what is lovingly known as the Sam Cam. Things like attaching the camera to a motorcycle and riding it at people, which is the final scene of the first movie. Bruce Campbell screams at the end of the first movie because it's kind of a cliffhanger ending. He's screaming because he's really getting hit by a motorcycle with a camera on it. So, Evil Dead 2 is where Sam Raimi comes into his own. It's a retelling of the first movie. This time, they cut down the cast to a lot less people, where it's Ashley going into the woods with his girlfriend, finding the recordings and unleashing hell, just like the first movie. But this time it's more focused on the mental breakdown of Ash. And there is, because a lot of the scenes of the film or Bruce Campbell by himself. This is where that Sam Raimi characteristic of the camera being a character comes into play. There are a lot of scenes where Bruce is just in the cabin by himself, and there are noises, and he's seeing things, and the camera is setting the tone for it. The camera is giving us everything we need. It's not the music like most Hollywood films rely on today. And for the most part, Bruce Campbell's scenes are reactionary. It's just him reacting to sounds he's hearing, and it's the camera that's adding the tone.
Well, that's actually very evident in that somewhat infamous scene where everything in the cabin comes to life and starts laughing at him, and he just kind of, insane as all hell, just starts laughing with it.
Yes.
And the camera is very active during that scene. Like, the camera is never stationary.
Exactly. There's even scenes of Bruce Campbell reacting to things where Sam Raimi is hanging from the ceiling of the cabin upside down so that he could get a 180-degree vertical pan.
Oh my gosh.
So he is doing all kinds of crazy off-the-wall things. There's this beautiful scene where the Force, quotations, not the George Lucas Force.
The evil Force.
So
Sorry.
It chases Ash through the entirety of the cabin in a single cut. It enters through one door of the cabin. Bruce Campbell is running in front of it, turning, looking back, dashing through rooms, and it's continuing to follow him all the way through the cabin. It is a absolute beautiful scene and shows how it shows the difference in philosophy of how Sam Raimi approaches cuts. Because a lot of film directors would do lots of smash cuts from different angles. You would see one room looking through a door, and you would see the actress run by the door, and then you would do a GoPro or something on their face, which didn't exist at the time. Which is another thing Sam Raimi did at this point that no one else was doing. Instead of running with a camera and holding it in his hands, he would attach it to 2x4s so he could hold it away from his body. And the board would absorb a lot of that vibration and shock for the camera so that he could do this semi-steady hand cam, which allowed him to do really beautiful shots, such as running through the cabin. And
Yeah.
the movie itself is, of the Evil Dead films, it is the truest to the original intent and is probably the most entertaining because of the scenes like you mentioned where there's a clock on the wall and it stops moving and then things start laughing at him. And by things, I mean things like the lampshade starts laughing at him, the books start laughing at him, the dead deer on the wall starts laughing at him, and he starts laughing back, and the camera's just all over the place, dashing everywhere.
Yeah, it's quite the movie. And there's a lot more of that in Army of Darkness as well.
Yes,
Which, Army of Darkness is just out there.
Yeah, Army of Darkness goes off the rails. Evil Dead 2 ends on a cliffhanger where he gets sucked into a portal and lands in the year 1300. It is
in Europe.
In Europe in 1300. Him and the Oldsmobile that Sam Raimi tries to add to every movie he's ever directed. It's nicknamed the Classic, and it's everywhere. It's the car that Aunt May drives in Spider-Man. Or
Yeah.
Uncle Ben,
Right.
his car is the
Yeah,
Oldsmobile, the Delta
Yes.
88. So Evil Dead 2 ends on a cliffhanger. We move into Evil Dead 3. This is where Sam Raimi gives up on horror. Just absolutely, and goes full slapstick, pardon my phrase, but balls to the wall, unhinged, unfettered Sam Raimi. This movie has lots of callbacks to things like the Three Stooges, such as a scene where he's in a graveyard and there's these skeletons, hands reaching up out of the graveyard. He falls on his face, and then there's this entire sequence where skeleton hands are doing things like poking him in the nose, trying to poke him in the eyes and him blocking it, and then they come at him from both sides, and it's making cartoon noises like boing, boing, blah, 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 like straight up cartoon noises.
Yep, slapstick type.
Oh, and yeah, there's also the infamous scene where he's explaining to a bunch of peasants his Remington shotgun, and he says, "This is my boomstick." It's just funny. The whole speech is amazing. He starts describing how much it costs and where you could get it at the store that he works, and he ends his entire monologue by saying, "Shop smart, shop S-smart." It's like, what the hell?
You got it? Yeah, we got it. So that points to another thing about this movie. Bruce Campbell is in everything that Sam Raimi does. Everything. Pretty much.
Even Spider-Man.
He's the bellhop.
Well, actually, he's the wrestling announcer. He's the bellhop, and he's something else too. I can't remember what though.
So this was also the first time Sam Raimi is the first time I had seen Friends. You know, the idea of bringing your friends along, and I don't mean Matt Damon type bring your friends along. I mean finding a reason to put them in there, not just to star in it, but to have them somewhere in it. Sam Raimi puts his brother in everything, Ted, which some people may recognize. Ted is Joxer the Mighty from Hercules and Xena.
Yeah.
So the third movie is him giving up on horror pretty much and just doing slapstick, vaudeville shenanigans. This is where Bruce Campbell blows up the screen. He takes over the movie in a way that he hadn't really. He was a character, but in Army of the Dead, he is Bruce Campbell. He is a wise ass. He is cracking off the majority of one-liners that you will hear anyone repeat are from Army of Darkness. Groovy, give me some sugar, baby, head of the king, listen up, you primitive screwheads. I can tell you right now, the only thing you're running is Jack and shit, and Jack left town.
That was a good line. That was a very good line, yes.
So this is Bruce Campbell becoming the Bruce Campbell we would know and love. And this idea of him being the king of the B film, which is something I didn't even know existed at the time when I was watching that. I just thought, you know, camp and stuff was a style, not that it was like, oh, this is a B film. This isn't big Hollywood stuff, which I guess is fine because I could watch the Evil Dead series a million more times than almost any other modern cinema because I can tell that there is a person behind the camera who is having fun. And he's doing it because he's having fun, not because he was getting a paycheck.
Yeah, it's evident.
There is definite love and craft in these movies. It's certainly being told the way he wants to tell them and not following the formula. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's figuring it out. He's not doing something based on something he learned. It's something every movie is him figuring things out. And that makes it the even more enjoyable for me.
Okay, can I hop in here with a confession?
Yeah.
So, I briefly mentioned it last week that I don't do horror movies.
Yes.
nor did I ever grow up with mates at school who were into horror movies. So I'd never had anybody say to me, "Oh, you got to watch it. Oh, you got to watch it." So Evil Dead never really came into my vision. If I came across it, I would have recognized it as a horror movie, so I never went. So to be honest, I've not watched any of the Evil Deads. On your recommendation last night, I sat down to watch Army of Darkness. And I'll put it this way. The 12-year-old in me was laughing his head off. Right? I'm just sitting on the couch going, chortle, chortle, chortle. And my wife and my daughter are staring at me, giving me serious WTFs. Right? Okay? Because they're watching this going, what the hell are you making us watch? Okay. So
Classic cinema.
Well, I by my own decision, I stopped watching it after 20 minutes.
Oh,
Sam Raimi didn't come into the name Sam Raimi, and the movies he made didn't come into my acknowledgement until he was announced as being the new director to be contracted to make the Warcraft movie.
whoa!
Okay? Because at that point, half the internet's going all ape, going, "Oh, you can't have him, you can't have him," and the other half were going, "Well, he made these great movies, Evil Dead and the Spider-Man. He'll be a great director." So it wasn't until then that I could actually put the name together with the movies, and I was fine at that point because I watched Spider-Man, and we'll go into detail about that. And I had no problem with the Spider-Man movies. Looking back at some of the research that I've done in this last week, absolutely see the Sam Cam reference that you were referring to, and I certainly see the appeal when you can put somebody's own idea, own creation, and you get pleasure and fascination and appeal to, wow, that's him. He created that. I love it. More, please. And I get that. And I sort of see it. I mean, even in the first 20 minutes of Army and Darkness, and the trailer and so forth, you can see where a lot of this has come from. And then 2 days earlier, I sat down and watched Spider-Man 2, and I was able to connect back and I see what you mean by Sam Cam.
Yep, you can see the biggest... Okay, so let's move out of Evil Dead. It was a wonky, multi-tonal, horror, funny comedy series. And he makes other stuff after this. He ends up making a movie called Crime Wave. He ends up making a Western of all things because of Sharon Stone. For reasons? I don't understand that. He made The Quick and the Dead in 95. So Army of Darkness was 92. Before Army of Darkness, he makes Dark Man because he was wanting to make a Batman film, but he couldn't get the rights to it. So he just gets mad and makes his own comic book movie called Dark Man with Liam Neeson.
A very young Liam Neeson, yes.
Exactly. Who ends up playing a character where he hides his face.
Yeah, that movie, I've only seen it once. I was very young. It confused the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
then
agreed.
He makes A Simple Plan, which is funny because a lot of people compare it to Fargo, which that itself is hilarious because when he was making it, he was in contact with the Coen brothers, who he brought to Hollywood. When he finally moved to Hollywood, he brings the Coen brothers. And he actually did ask them for pointers on things like how to shoot in the snow, which I thought was neat. He makes For the Love of the Game, which is Kevin Costner, which no one remembers that movie because Waterworld sucked, and that is the only thing people remember. That's the only thing people remember about For the Love of the Game. Waterworld sucked.
It was too close to Waterworld. You're right.
I remember For the Love of the Game.
Yet another Kevin Costner baseball film.
Yes.
Yes.
There are many.
Yes.
Then he makes this weird movie called The Gift, which is... so, it's directed by Sam Raimi, supernatural thriller, written by Billy Bob Thornton, and it's based on Billy Bob Thornton's psychic mother, on her experiences.
Everything about this sounds fantastic.
It also has Keanu Reeves, Hilary Swank, Katie Holmes, and Greg Kinnear.
Yes.
It's so weird. You can't talk about Sam Raimi without bringing up these strange names. It's fascinating watching him work his way through cinema because he doesn't stick to one thing.
He is oddly prolific.
Exactly. Which is how The Quick and the Dead came about. Sharon Stone put her foot down and said, I will not be in this film unless Sam Raimi directs it. And so you end up with this Western that's supposed to be like a Sergei Leone movie with Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, Russell Crowe, and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Because
and
reasons.
It has some of the most... It has a very large amount of showdowns. Some of the largest amount of showdowns in a Western. And it's not that great. So
No.
Yeah.
It did not receive any good reviews, really.
Well, that's actually one of the things about Sam Raimi that I find fascinating is he reminds me a lot of Ridley Scott, in where I feel like he's very hit and miss. It's like either Sam Raimi is making something that is just amazing and that you're going to love for whatever reason, or you're just like, what did you do? Why did you do this? And he's, although I will give Sam Raimi this, he is not anywhere near as bad about that as Ridley Scott is. Like, Ridley Scott is responsible for some of my favorite movies ever. And then he's also responsible for some of the movies that I just hate.
So we ran through a bunch of films, and it's to get to this point. Spider-Man. The Spider-Man trilogy. The reason I was so excited for this is because, like you said, Veet, you quit watching Evil Dead or Army of Darkness after 20 minutes. That's not the movies I expect people to love, because at that time you had to just be keeping up with him, and a lot of that love was fostered by the fact that his Renaissance film, the name of his company, they produced the Hercules and Xena TV show. So a lot of this love for Sam Raimi was fostered through watching that after watching Evil Dead, because there are a lot of Sam Raimi tones that they kept, even though Sam Raimi wasn't specifically directing. There is a lot of his camera work that is in those, which is hilarious because you can see that same type of camera work in Edgar Wright's films, specifically the Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, that kind of stuff. More Shaun of the Dead, because Hot Fuzz is more of a parody-esque of... Why did I forget his name? The guy who made Transformers.
Michael Bay.
Michael Bay. So yeah, it's more of a Michael Bay type film, but Shaun of the Dead definitely has a lot of that Sam Cam work going on. And it's funny because we will talk about Edgar Wright when we're talking about the Spider-Man films. So the first Spider-Man film comes out. Sam Raimi. Don't know why they chose Sam Raimi, but they chose Sam Raimi. It is funny because, as you said, Veet, you wouldn't have known who he was for the most part.
And certainly, it really was out of the blue.
No, yeah, absolutely. In 2002, no clue who Sam Raimi was.
See, I knew who Sam Raimi was, and when I learned that he was making Spider-Man, my first reaction was, "Oh, this cannot go well." I had absolutely no faith whatsoever in this process, and you know what? Turns out to be a hilariously inspired choice. It completely works. I can't imagine that movie any other way.
Yeah.
It is interesting though when you do look back at who they choose, certain actors or certain directors to be involved in the movie, how or why they get chosen. You know, sure, Sam Raimi, why do they choose him to direct Spider-Man? Or I remember there was a big outcry when news came out that Heath Ledger was going to play the Joker.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
And he was only known as basically a romantic comedy actor. It's curious when these happen and they work. Like, I don't want anybody to fail. If, you know, an actor or director or whoever goes into doing whatever job, I don't want them to fail. But it's curious when they make these odd decisions, or at the time you think they're odd decisions, and they work. And you think, what did they see? What did that person see, that executive producer most likely see or want, that made him make that decision? And in this case, I think it worked.
It absolutely did. And so it's surprising that Sam Raimi gets chosen to direct this movie. It's also surprising that Tobey Maguire is chosen to be Peter Parker, because he was an independent film star. But for me, at least, he absolutely fits the baby-faced boy next door of Peter Parker. Just this unassuming guy who can't catch a break. I think Tobey Maguire did a good job of portraying that. And what's funny is some of the people at the studio wanted Freddie Prinze Jr. So think about that.
Yeah, that's an odd one. Odd
I can
choice.
see it though.
Really?
I can actually. If you dye his hair, and because one of the things about Peter Parker is, on the whole, and not to get too deep into Spider-Man mythos, but it's like, what version of Peter Parker are you going to actually portray? The really young one, the one who's, you know, in college, the adult who's, you know, struggling with, you know, his responsibilities that he has taken onto himself. I mean, James Cameron actually wanted to do Spider-Man.
Yep.
And the studios ultimately told him, you can't do Spider-Man because your ideas are absolutely insane. I mean, not that his ideas were like bad, but he wanted to do things that were just technologically not feasible at the time.
Right.
So instead he went and made True Lies. Bless him. But the thing is, he wanted to have Michael Biehn play Peter Parker, and Michael Biehn was Kyle Reese in Terminator. And the thing is, I can totally see it. If you basically jumped into a Peter Parker who was, you know, in his 30s and had been Spider-Man for like 10 years or so, I totally see that. That guy would be Peter Parker at that age. It makes sense. So, I mean, it just depends on what kind of Peter Parker you're talking about. I could see a Peter Parker that would be Freddie Prinze Jr., but, you know, that's a tangent.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Now, you don't see him as Fred from Scooby-Doo?
I love that movie. Do not mention that movie belligerently. I love the Scooby-Doo movie.
Oh, man, I'm joking.
I cannot see Freddie every time I see Freddie Prinze Jr. I cannot see.
Oh, man.
I cannot unsee. Let's put it that way.
I love that film. That movie is so spot on. It's hilarious.
So,
I'll back you up there, Robert. I do think it was a little underrated, or a little bit heavily criticized.
The sequel's horrible,
was
but
harmless. The first movie is harmless.
Yeah, it's good. It's
not even harmless. It's magnificent. Oh, I cussed. You need to plate me. You need to totally plate me.
All right.
So Sam Raimi gets this movie. He gets Tobey Maguire, and he shows the world, if you're going to make a comic book movie, you can't be afraid that it's a comic book.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it works. It was the first movie to make $100 million in a single weekend. So Sam Raimi comes in out of nowhere, a guy who loves comic books, made a comic book movie on his own, and dominates with Spider-Man. Not just from a structural standpoint, but from a cinematic standpoint. Spider-Man swinging through the streets is beautiful. The way they shot it, the way they handled the camera work, because Sam Raimi is a man who knows how to move a camera. He moves it so well he could start his own trucking company. Cinema joke.
You've had that one in the pocket for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, you've been hanging on to that one.
Oh, man.
So he makes this movie, and the thing is, he doesn't make standard comic book movie. He doesn't make, Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, where he goes to comic book. He structures the story as basically a simple love story. And the superhero stuff is just bonus. It's a guy trying to figure out his life, in love with a girl, but he has all these things that are getting in the way. And he's trying to figure out where he fits and all that. And that, I think that's what makes it work. That it's not mustache twirling type of over the top.
Well, he also recognizes and perpetuates what I've always felt was the great thing about Spider-Man, which is Spider-Man is not about Spider-Man. The Spider-Man is actually about Peter Parker.
Yes.
He just happens to be Spider-Man. Therein lies his greater inner conflict.
That is what makes Spider-Man my favorite character. The fact that he gets to be... It's the difference between Spider-Man and Superman. Superman will never face a problem in his life that he can't solve. Even in his civilian life, any problem he has to pretend that it's a problem. Spider-Man puts on, Peter Parker puts on his mask, and he still has every problem that he had before he had the mask on. And
that's why he's relatable.
And it's always been what makes me love Spider-Man. Now, from a comic book perspective, that also means that when he is Spider-Man, that they will concoct a way for him to beat everybody, which is why he's beaten everybody, like the Juggernaut and the Hulk, and he beat the X-Men. But from a character perspective, especially in this movie, I love how he can't escape his life problems, which works. It makes for a good movie. Willem Dafoe he's Defoeing it up hardcore in this movie.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yep.
And I can see, if you're wanting to watch a comic book movie, how he could be the one you catch up on, because he is that over-the-top Batman and Robin villain.
Yeah, the 70s style villain.
Yeah, which is saved by the fact that the rest of it, I watch it for Spider-Man. I don't care what his villains are doing. I care what Peter Parker and Spider-Man are doing.
Actually, to segue a little bit, that's an incredibly important aspect of the first movie, is that you are there for Peter Parker, because, frankly, the Green Goblin doesn't work for me. Not in that movie. William Dafoe is amazing as Norman Osborn, but the Green Goblin outfit is just bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't let him emote at all. It's ridiculous. And also, plot-wise, it's really bizarre, because the Green Goblin actually succeeds in every single one of his objectives, not even halfway through the movie. He accomplishes all that he has set out to do. And the movie continues because he's like, I guess I have a beef with Spider-Man. And it's not really well supported. But Peter Parker and Spider-Man carry that movie so well that you almost don't notice this.
Exactly. Which I love. I love that a movie can hold up by having the person you're supposed to care about, you care about so much that you can ignore the other parts that aren't so great. So he does this. He lands it, knocks it out of the park. People have to notice, hey, Sam Raimi, he's the thing now, because he sets the tone for the Marvel. I think the Marvel comic book movies we're getting now are set up. Like the Spider-Man trilogy is the seminal moment where Hollywood can stop being scared of comic book movies.
Well, he rescues the entire genre. I mean, Batman and Robin had just done its best to destroy comic book movies as a financial enterprise forever. And X-Men kind of did a good thing, but even then, X-Men retooled it very heavily. Everybody wears black.
Yeah, exactly.
It was. We're trying to be super cool, even though we're X-Men. Ignore the fact that we're X-Men. We're trying to be super cool about it. And he was just sort of like, no, just make the character. Just make the character and be true to it.
Yep.
And it worked.
He played to the fans, and it was fantastic.
And he wasn't afraid to say, this is a comic book character. It's not like... you're right about the longer they went on with Batman, the more they removed the fact that he was a superhero originating from a set of stories that already existed. And I guess that's why I enjoyed... I rewatched Spider-Man 2, so I hadn't seen it again since it first played. And I really enjoyed it, way more than I enjoyed it the first time I saw it. And that's because I had the nostalgia. It brought back all the nostalgia of sitting down as a kid and watching the 1970s cartoons, Spider-Man cartoons. Because it borrowed not heavily, but it did borrow from the caricatures that you saw. I'm sure they existed in the comic books and they existed in that cartoon series. Jonas Jameson?
J. Jonah Jameson.
That's the one.
Triple J.
So, I mean, he is heavily borrowed from that caricature. As well as the Green Goblin. I think that's part... Yeah. No, I agree with Robert in that William Dafoe played him well, or Harry Osborn well. Not Harry Osborn, his father. Norman. Sorry. Played Norman Osborn well, but I think I don't know whether they were just trying too heavily to characterize. Is that a word? There you go. The Green Goblin, so they lost a bit of it there. But it was enjoyable because yes, it did pander to the fan base.
Well, it's not even pander. It's being honest.
Yeah, he was making the movie that he would want to see because he was a comic book fan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's not pandering.
That. Well,
that's not pandering. Well, no, I mean, it would be pandering if the movie was wish fulfillment on the side of the audience. Like if somebody went out and was like, "Hey, what do you guys want to see?" Like a lot of TV shows do, and we're not even talking about like last week's Sarah Connor Chronicles, but just TV shows take feedback and start retooling their plot lines to fit what people want. And his movie is really Spider-Man is a certain way. We're going to make Spider-Man. We're not going to make some Hollywood executives version of Spider-Man. We're not going to make Clone Saga Spider-Man. We're not going to do any of these things. We're just going to make Spider-Man.
Right, and you're right, and that doesn't happen until Spider-Man 3. But maybe pandering is the wrong word. Maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah, because like actually, a good example of pandering would be Jim Carrey as the Riddler. Right, that shouldn't happen. He's not. No, he's not. You're basically saying, oh well, Jim Carrey's a funny guy and Riddler's kind of a weird person. Let's just put those two together. It's like, but you're casting on star power. It's like having Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face. And yes, I think of Batman Forever.
This is a discussion for another time. I don't disagree with the casting of Jim Carrey as the Riddler, but that's another So what I was saying was, okay, so it's not pandering, but there
catered,
is
catered to the fans, not the studio.
True, he paid homage. He obviously had a definite love and care for the original cartoon series, for the original comic book strip, and that shows, and which is what got me to enjoy it even more.
Yep. And then,
well, just to even jump into Spider-Man 2 even more, I mean, Spider-Man 2 is just unbelievably fantastic for almost everything that it does. Dr. Octopus is so well realized, so well acted, so well portrayed, and that's fantastic considering that he is one of my least favorite of all Spider-Man villains.
Oh, man.
Like, I can't stand Dr. Octopus. And even in the movie, Dr. Octopus still has one of the main problems that I have with him in the comic books, which is like, you're just a guy with metal arms. How can you take a punch to the jaw from Spider-Man? This is ridiculous. It doesn't matter. He's done so well that you just enjoy watching the fights play out. And the emotional journey that Peter Parker goes on, the love subplot, all of it. That movie is incredible. I mean, there's science problems. If you can craft a sun, I don't care how big it is, dumping it into a river is not going to help you.
No, agreed.
Just little things like that, which is kind of where I think Sam Raimi's B-movie-esque roots kind of play into and also help the Spider-Man films, because no one in their right mind, I mean, like, let's just say it, if I were writing that film, the idea that Dr. Octopus has crafted a miniature sun in an apartment building with absolutely no like security precautions whatsoever other than a magnetizer in the middle of downtown Manhattan, I think I'd probably lose my mind before I ever wrote those words in a script.
Yep. And
like, I would have to be certifiable. And yet he just does it and he owns it and you accept it and it's fun.
Right.
I think a lot of that has to deal with the fact that not as a slam on comic books, but comic books itself.
No, they're awfully written.
Well, no.
Let's just go there. They're badly written.
Comic books are B literature.
Yes.
They're badly written.
They're B literature. They just do whatever and run with it. And I think that's what makes Sam Raimi so good, is that as a B movie director directing a AAA production, he can approach it with his B tactics and it be perfectly fine.
Ugh.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I think it's a fair call.
I see what you did there.
Haha. So, Spider-Man 2 is the point in the series of this trilogy where you can see Sam Raimi is his most comfortable, because he's not afraid to stretch the Sam Cam out, especially when Dr. Octavius becomes Doc Ock. In that surgery room, that entire segment, that horror movie scene of the arms killing all the nurses and doctors, is exactly what I expect from Sam Raimi. And it has all of the staples of his previous work, having first-person perspective of the thing killing people, having quick cuts. He loves to do his zoom cut, where he doesn't just cut to something, he quick zooms on it, which I love. He also uses that he will do montages to show a process happening. So this is where I knew Sam was comfortable. And I love 1. 2 to me is more fun. You have more fun with the villain. You have more fun with the cinematography.
Let's go there. Part 2 is one of the best comic book movies ever made, period.
Yes. And it's not, this time, it's not me just caring about Peter Parker. I care about Doc Ock. I care about Mary Jane. I absolutely love Aunt May in this.
Can I just say I didn't like Mary Jane, and I don't think it was Kirsten Dunst. I think the part of the problem is up until recently, female love interests, particularly in comic book series, are ineffectual.
That doesn't change until The Amazing Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, but
So,
it took
it's-
decades for Mary Jane to be in danger as often as she is in those movies.
Yeah, it was. It's not from the cinema perspective. It would give the impression that it was like a Saturday cartoon where, oh, she's kidnapped again. And it's like, oh, Princess Peach, got to go to the castle.
Yeah. So that was a low point for me, but I don't think that was necessarily poor acting. I think it's just them following that part of the formula for a comic book story.
Exactly. That's him.
It really is.
Yeah.
There's also an aspect of it where whenever I watch Spider-Man 2, I actually think Mary Jane comes across as just a terrible person.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is kind of selfish.
Selfish, ineffectual, and the comment was made in my household that all women were ineffectual. And thinking back, I disagree because Aunt May is very strong. She's
I love Aunt May.
Strong. Yeah, she's
even in the
very
comic. Even in the comics,
Yes.
actually, I was going to say Mary Jane, and again, why I hate One More Day. Mary Jane is actually one of the most powerful female characters in Marvel Comics pre One More Day, because here is a woman. She's married to Peter Parker. She doesn't need to be. Her existence in the story is not determined by Peter Parker's actions.
Nope.
She is an independent individual, and she chooses to be married to Spider-Man, knowing full well the risks that this brings to her. Because she likes Peter. She could walk away from this at any time. She
Right.
chooses not to. And she's also not a wimp. She's not somebody who's constantly in danger. There's a lot about her that is just very powerful, very awesome. And then Joe Quesada, editor-in-chief at Marvel, is just like, Peter being married is boring.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
No, it was actually one of the things about him I loved. I loved that Peter Parker had a life.
Yep.
I thought that was awesome. But that actually is part of why I think executive meddling had a lot to do with the plot of Spider-Man 3.
Oh, it
Because
did.
that movie goes out of its way to ruin their relationship after they've spent 2 movies building that relationship. And after that movie comes out, One More Day happens. I don't think this is a coincidence.
Every time
I say One More Day,
I
it's
get-
like, oh my god!
I'm so angry.
Dude, I hate saying the words.
Please stop. Stop.
One more day. One more day. One
So-
more day.
Stop
Okay.
beating him. He's already dead.
So you went from what we consider to be a very good movie to Spider-Man 3. Now, I'm trying to recall my recollection of Spider-Man 3. I didn't come out thinking it was terrible. I didn't come out thinking it was as good as 2. So let me ask you, why was Spider-Man 3? What did you see on the screen that made Spider-Man 3 not as enjoyable?
So, I want to say, as somebody who closely followed the cinematography of Sam Raimi, I remember watching it for the first time, and he starts slipping in the camp. And as the movie goes on, it starts getting heavier and heavier, and then he does the dance scene. And I remember sitting where Peter Parker's doing his John Travolta thing, and I remember turning to my friend and going, Sam Raimi hates this movie. Sam Raimi is done with this movie. He doesn't want to be doing this. He doesn't care about these characters anymore. And in an interview with The Nerdist, he tells Chris Hardwick, a director should not direct characters that he doesn't care about. And there's very few times where I have seen someone communicate through their art how they're feeling. And I can tell by how they've structured it, especially when you intimately familiar with the work of that creator, sitting there going, he doesn't care about Spider-Man anymore. They've ruined it for him.
Well, that was evident even before the movie came out. I remember reading an interview where he's talking about Venom's inclusion in the film, and he's talking about how it was up to Kirsten Dunst and McGuire to carry the film because there was going to be, in his words, a frickin' alien in it. And I just remember, not the exact words, but the entire like paragraph where he's talking about this was just full of vitriol and disgust. And you could just tell that something had happened to this movie even before I'd gone to it. And all of my fears were very much realized upon watching it.
So why?
So
there's
the plot is too fat. There's just too many characters in it, and sure. I think you can do a good plot with multiple characters, but you can feel a lot of this stuff. It feels shoehorned in. Just put it there. We said so. Put this in. We don't
have any relation to each other.
We don't want the Vulture put in the Venom. What? Why? Why? He shows up suddenly. Why do I care?
Yeah, but that's kind of what I mean. Like, there's no relationship to any of these events. Sandman has no relation to Harry becoming the new Goblin. Has no relation to Venom.
No, that was the story. That was the story Sam Raimi wanted to tell. Sandman is his favorite Spider-Man villain. He wanted to tell a heartwarming story about a troubled Sandman, and then maybe put in the Vulture. That. And then the studio was like, no, you gotta, nobody cares about Sandman. You gotta put in somebody people recognize. Why don't you put in that Venom guy?
Yeah, and even then, I mean, my friends and I actually did this thing. Because, I mean, ignore that, obviously, the entire point of this movie is to have Sandman in it. Because Sam Raimi wanted to stick to classic 60s villains, like Sandman, like Doc Ock. And ignore that was the goal, and restructure the movie by removing him from it. And you could actually redo the entire plot by having Harry and Peter fight multiple times, which makes sense. Their conflict has been set up very well. And then have Harry, being, in charge of Oscorp, dig into Oscorp's, experimental designs and find the Venom suit, because Venom was actually at the time in Ultimate Comics retooled as a bioorganic suit that was an attempt to cure cancer. And you could have just had the same origin story with Venom in that way, and then had Venom go out of control, do the whole black suit thing, and then have Harry and Peter team up against Venom to defeat it. And all of the points of the plot are hit. Like, every single theme is touched upon, the forgiveness and all of that. I mean, instead, as much as some people like Sandman, my biggest beef with that movie was that ultimately it boiled down to a man forgiving another man for killing his adopted father, and I just couldn't accept that, especially since I really couldn't. It made me angry, especially when we dealt with Ben being shot in part 1. So not only are we retreading ground that is, 40 years tired.
Retcon.
Yeah, we're also retconning it. And then the emotional crux of the film was something that just enraged me. Made me very furious. So ultimately I felt that the movie actually could have been better served by not having Sandman in it.
Wait, you mean you don't like that part of the movie where it's like, "Sir, I was here the night your father was killed, and I inspected him with my science knowledge, and he was killed by his own glider." Oh, cool. Okay, I have no beef with Spider-Man anymore.
Everything about that movie, you can just tell that it's off the rails. Executive meddling is deep and in charge, and it's just, it shouldn't be made the way that it's being made, and it just, you can just completely tell.
So that raises the question: why do executive producers meddle? If you've got a winning formula like Spider-Man 2, why stick your nose in when Spider-Man 3 turns up?
Because they always think they know best. The problem with Hollywood in general is it is and I don't mean like the town, but
Yeah, I understand.
it's an industry
The
of
industry.
ego. It's an industry of ego. Everyone is there who is successful, rolling in money, and they all think it's because of what they did.
Yep.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, my ideas are fantastic. Let's ask Kevin Smith about Superman.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, he's talking
look.
to an executive
Oh
producer who's like,
crap! Are we
yeah,
gonna?
he's like, we've got to have a bear. He has to fight a bear. There needs to be a giant spider in this movie. Why? Because giant spiders are awesome, man. I don't care that I'm making Superman. I have to have a giant spider. It's like, well, but why? Because I'm the producer,
So
and I know best.
Are we now secretly or openly in a rivalry with Kevin Smith? Is he going to trash talk us on his podcast too?
We'll take his trash talk. No, I got no problem there.
I like Kevin Smith.
I love you, Kevin. I love you.
Or not.
Punch me in the
Or
face.
not.
Please punch me in the face.
I watch
Look.
Comic Book Men, I swear.
It's very interesting. If executives, I mean, it's a problem in Hollywood. We see it again, or else we wouldn't have director's cuts to movies. We wouldn't have the DVD release. DVD release 12 months later of the director's cut.
It's like 40 minutes longer.
It's 40 minutes longer, but unfortunately, the director didn't make the movie that he wanted to make.
Well, no, some of that actually, well, that's true, but some of that is the director having different concerns. I mean, like when it comes to Peter Jackson's Hobbit, for example, he's like, well, people can go to the bathroom when they're at home.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. That's different. He's had to shorten the movie because people have to sit in the cinema for no more than 2.5 hours. So the DVD release is an extra 40 minutes, 45 minutes. That's just him extending the love. But you constantly hear, not constantly, but regularly hear of directors who constantly, Scott Ridley's one with Blade Runner. You know, how many different takes do we have till 20 years later he finally gets to release his director's cut of the movie the way he wanted it seen.
Without that weird self-narration.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's...
Audiences aren't going to understand. You guys just standing here staring in the rain. That don't make no sense. Audiences want to hear what's going on. Tell them what's going on. They get confused. They're dumb.
Exactly. So it is... I agree with Robert. It is almost too many chiefs.
Yeah.
That's one.
Too many chefs.
The executives, the greatest fear, I think, is losing money. And so if they think the movie's going to lose money, they interfere.
So
instead of just trusting their instinct. They trusted their instinct in the first place in getting Sam Raimi, an absolute nobody, to make a comic book movie. Didn't just go with it.
But also consider what were the expectations for Spider-Man?
Nothing.
Like
yes, agreed.
Exactly. There was no expectation. Comic book movies were kind of dead.
They screwed up and hired a capable director.
Right, and they made $800 million. So now they think the executive producers know what they're talking about. The second movie makes another $800 million. And now I think they're being greedy, and they think, well, now in order for Superman 3 to be successful, it has to make more than 800.
We're not at Superman 3. We're at Spider-Man. No, I'm just kidding.
Spider-Man. Sorry.
Superman 3.
But the thing is, a lot of that meddling comes from, like we were saying before, they don't trust you to not go see their movie. So there is some executive going, here's the thing, they're going to kill us if we don't do Venom. Right, we need to have Venom in the trailers. We have to have promotional material that has Venom in it. Venom needs to be in this movie. I don't care how you do it. Put Venom in the movie. Because here's the dirty secret. Once you've bought the ticket, it doesn't matter if the movie's good or not.
Yep.
No,
they got your money.
Right? Yeah.
Thanks,
even if you
Commander.
walk out of the movie and leave in a fit, they got your money.
Yeah.
So they will make terrible artistic decisions purely because they're trying to corral more people into the opening weekend before word of mouth spreads, because they just don't have the faith. That's what a lot of these movies are. I mean, it's why the joke is, and the twist is, it's in space, because that's quite literally how he's thinking, or he or she is thinking. The executive is literally saying to themselves, if I do this, the trailer will get X number of people in there on the opening weekend, and it doesn't have to be good.
Yep, and that's how you end up with Michael Bay.
Yeah, yes and no. I
He's
agree
got some
that
good.
He does have some good stuff, but
Armageddon and The Rock are awesome. Just saying.
you know, like
Yes,
taking
they
the piss out of Michael Bay is just too easy. I guess I should be. I lose points for that because it's too easy.
I agree that the executive producer is worried about. His concern is getting those people in that first weekend, but he can't keep making crap after crap because then that word spreads. That executive producer makes crap, and then nobody wants to be involved with him anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a bit too, double-sided.
Well, that's true now. It used to not be.
Yeah.
I mean, now we have social media and the internet,
Right.
and we can keep track of everybody's every move. Well, it's kind of like, not to get into politics, but that's why I laugh at politicians anymore, because it's like they operate thinking that I don't have their every word recorded and can just go look at them up on Facebook and YouTube. It's hilarious to me. But you see a lot of that with a lot of these executive producers as well, because they're still acting like it's the 1980s when they're making a movie.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
the
You're
format
right.
of Hollywood hasn't caught up with the modernity of technology.
No, I agree. And they're still very reactionary.
It's still old money being like, well, I paid for this, and I say it's going to have venom in it.
Yeah. I
Pretty
agree.
much.
And then what happened when Deadpool comes out and you got an R-rated movie who makes a bazillion money, a whole bunch of money, is now all these Hollywood studios are going, well, we'll make an R-rated movie too.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
actually, the big thing right now is people saying what movies won't be R-rated
Yep.
for their
It's
comic
it's
book
going to be the
franchise.
Matrix effect. Deadpool has the possibility of having the Matrix effect, where everyone's like, we got to make it exactly like that.
Yep. Yep.
We still have not recovered from the Matrix,
Nope.
and I don't mean that badly. I'm just saying we haven't recovered from that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, when you have everything was affected by the Matrix. Even the movie Cats and Dogs had a scene where it was slow motion panning around a person kicking or a cat.
True.
Deuce Bigelow, Mel Gigolo did it. Even I mean, come on.
Yeah. So Sam Raimi makes those, ends on a low note. I'm not angry at Sam Raimi. You can't be the champion of all. You can't be the gold medal winner every time you race.
Particularly not in that industry.
No, yeah, and it's actually a shame because he was actually still talking about doing Spider-Man 4 even when he was promoting his movie after Part 3, Drag Me to Hell.
Yep.
Yeah, he was talking about 4 and 5.
Yeah, well, he had plans, and actually, just to get it out of the way, because I feel like I really need to get this off my chest. The current state of Spider-Man is a direct result of the fact that 3 was so butchered that he left the project, because part of the arrangement with Sony is that they have to keep making Spider-Man films or the rights relapse back to Marvel, and they
Yes.
can't do it anymore. And without Sam Raimi at the helm, they were more comfortable with rebooting the franchise entirely and making a movie in order to retain those rights than they were with making a Part 4, which is why we have The Amazing Spider-Man, which, not to get too into it, but man, those movies got some problems, but massive props for actually having Spider-Man move like Spider-Man. I love that.
Yes.
The other thing, though, was because those movies were, as we said, bad. They are literally paint-by-numbers, soulless Spider-Man. They have good points, but they have a lot more bad points than good. And as a result, they've bombed so badly that they've entered into an unheard-of deal
Yeah.
with Disney where they're going to give Spider-Man back to Disney for free. No money was exchanged. He just gets to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe so that Sony can afterwards make their own Spider-Man movies where he is part of the Cinematic Universe. And they'd actually been trying to do that. They wanted to have the Oscorp Tower from Amazing Spider-Man in New York during the finale of Avengers. And they also, the reason there's a whole bunch of cranes at the end of Amazing Spider-Man in that last fight with the Lizard is because they were trying to suggest that this was them rebuilding after the alien
Right.
invasion of New York in Avengers.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so there was a lot. They had these plans, but the deal never went through. And Sony, who owns Spider-Man, they're getting wrecked by everyone in all categories. Xbox is killing the PlayStation. Samsung's killing them in phones and TVs. Quite literally, the only thing keeping the company afloat is the Spider-Man franchise. So even though Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 made a lot of money, it didn't make enough.
Yeah.
So in order to save Spider-Man, they're giving it back to Marvel creatively. That is absurd.
Yep.
We win. We totally win.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's like, what is going on over there? Poor Spider-Man. And it's all because they messed with Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
In a weird roundabout way, you could almost look at it as the destruction of Spider-Man 3 actually worked out in everybody's favor if Spider-Man being in the MCU works out.
Yes. True.
Yeah.
Very true.
I'm hoping it does, because I love the Spider-Man trilogy, and then the Amazing Spider-Man movies are just movie by committee.
Exactly. It feels soulless. It really does.
And that's nothing against Garfield. I think he did.
He's an amazing Peter Parker.
I love
He's
how
so wasted.
awkward
so
he
wasted.
is.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
And I love Gwen Stacy. I think they had a great version of her, but there's just nothing there. It's marionettes.
Hey.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And
Easy on the
it is a shame that Garfield is so wasted, because I would love for him, for example, to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Peter Parker. He was great. Actually, thinking about that, there is a petition right now to get J.K. Simmons to play J. Jonah Jameson again in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
He's the only person who can. That man,
I agree. He's the only one who can do it.
he brought a character to
go
life.
for it.
Yep. Very true.
So he does Spider-Man. Sam Raimi ends up working for 8 years on those movies. So almost a decade. And he closes that out by basically cleansing his palate with Drag Me to Hell.
Just so good.
Which is him just going, I'm Sam Raimi. I'm going to do Sam Raimi things.
Oh,
And makes a horror movie that, oh man. See, I can't start talking about it without thinking about all of the stuff that ends up happening to the actress in that.
that poor woman.
Because Sam
Sam
Raimi is like I said in the beginning, he's famous for the way he treats his actors. He doesn't mind if they get hurt. It makes him happy if they get hurt. There is nothing that he did in Evil Dead, no matter how many times Tobey Maguire was like, yeah, he was rough working for him. They cannot hold a candle to what happens to Alison Lohman in this movie.
No.
It is based on a script that was written at the time. The script, when he starts to film it, is 10 years old. Him and his brother wrote it 10 years. So basically, he's picking up cinematically where he left off. So he writes the script for Drag Me to Hell, does Spider-Man, and then comes back and picks back up as Sam Raimi doing Sam Raimi things. And this movie is the thing about this is I love Sam Raimi, but this is what I would call pandering. This is him pandering to the people who loved him when he got started, because he's doing all the things that people love him for, but he's doing it because that's why they love him. This actress, the story, it's almost like Thinner in a way. It's one of those get your comeuppance, you crossed the wrong person, now you must suffer type of things, where a gypsy woman gets denied, or she gets foreclosed on at the bank, and the woman who does it is punished You're like, oh, I can't, I'm losing my stuff. Well, you have to die. Gypsy curse.
That is the plot.
That's the plot.
Right.
You're cursed. Good luck with that. And
Okay.
what sets it up is that she finds out, oh, she just has to make amends with the woman she crossed. Well, the woman dies the day before she can make amends. She's just stuck with this
Ouch.
curse.
Ouch.
And there is nothing that happens in this movie that the actress doesn't have to ingest. Blood,
Ow.
mud, hands, bugs. It all goes in her mouth. The whole movie
All of it
goes in
An
her
arm
mouth.
goes in her mouth.
It is rough. It is rougher than Evil Dead 1. And that was him just being like, I don't care. And that was an X-rated film. This is PG-13, and it's harder for me to watch.
It is absurd. Everything that happens in this movie is just disgusting and ridiculous.
And the movie ends up with her literally getting dragged to hell. As in, arms come out of the ground and drag her to hell. Because she has to gift the cursed item, which is a button off of her blouse. Gift it to someone to pass on the curse. Earlier in the movie, she drops the envelope. It gets mixed up with someone else. She technically doesn't gift it to anyone, so she gets dragged to hell.
Oh, okay.
It is
Nowadays,
Ooh.
it's hard for me to like this movie because I feel like I'm watching Sam Raimi do what M. Night Shyamalan does. Just making a movie for himself.
Right.
Which
that's exactly what it is. You're not wrong at all.
Well, there's certainly no. Looking at the cast, there's certainly nobody there that I recognize.
Justin Long is the iMac guy. He's a Mac.
Yeah.
You're a PC.
Oh yes. But still, you can hardly call that a big name.
If you want to watch Justin Long in a horror movie, watch Jeepers Creepers. That's much more enjoyable. You root for the bad guy.
Okay.
See, for me, this movie, the reason why because I do like Drag Me to Hell. I like it because it's just completely absurd, like on its face, absurd. Because, like he said, there is nothing that goes well for this woman. Everything is just disgusting and gross. It all goes into her mouth. All of it goes into her mouth, and she gets screwed on a technicality. But there's also a seance where they try to bring the monster to light so they can defeat it in a physical battle, and they have the monster possess a goat.
Yeah, they trap it in a goat so they can.
The goat starts talking and being hostile.
It's like
amazing.
it's basically they go, okay, so if we can make it possess a goat, we can kill the goat, and it makes the demon go away, and the goat basically becomes a deadite from Evil Dead.
It's awesome.
So that's fun, but for me, the movie wasn't fun. And it's weird. It's not bad. It's just Sam Raimi being himself, but in a very self-referential way.
No, I can agree with that. I can totally agree with that. Like, I can understand completely when you say that you don't like it.
And then he does Oz the Great and Powerful.
I have not seen it.
Me neither. To be honest, the only reason why I haven't, because of James Franco.
No, I'm not a big Wizard of Oz fan, so I just didn't care.
So,
yeah.
The Oz Great and Powerful, it didn't click. It just didn't. My favorite character in it is someone who's not even real. It's the little China doll girl. She's fantastic. I loved her the moment I saw her. I was like, oh, she's so fragile and tiny. Yeah. But the rest of the movie, Mila Kunis, I don't know. She's the Wicked Witch, but she doesn't seem wicked. I feel like as soon as she shows up and she starts screaming and being evil, I just want to go, shut up, Meg. Because I couldn't disconnect the character from Mila Kunis. I didn't feel like there was a character. I felt like I was watching Mila Kunis in green paint. And I just didn't enjoy it that much. It's bleh. That kind of seems like what we've moved into is the whole bleh. You know, he has a great filmography. He has some weird stuff, but then it's Spider-Man 3, Drag Me to Hell, Oz the Great and Powerful, meh.
Oh, the other thing about Oz the Great and Powerful that irritated me was at the time he was slated to make Warcraft, which, as you know, we all have a thing for Warcraft.
Oh my god!
And, I know, but anyways,
we love you, Duncan Jones.
He delayed filming to make Oz the Great and Powerful, and I was like, oh, so you're going to make that instead first. And then it came out that the Curse of Spider-Man 3, if you will, was actually having an effect on Warcraft, because he left the project once he found out that Blizzard had veto power over anything that he did, because Blizzard envisions the Warcraft film as being true to the Warcraft game franchise.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be, you know, an alternative version of the story, but they wanted it to be true to what they were making. Sam Raimi, from what I've been able to gather piecemeal here and there, he was envisioning it as more of a setting within which to tell whatever story he wanted.
Yeah,
Right.
like if someone said, "Hey, make a movie in the Star Wars universe."
Right.
Exactly.
He's like, "Oh, cool!
And
I'm going to tell a unique story," and they're like, "No. This is just a telling of the story of World of Warcraft."
Yeah, and when he and his brother did a original script treatment, they brought it to Blizzard, and Blizzard basically, politely shredded it. We can't do this, we can't have that, this needs blah 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 blah, and they walked away from it because he was not comfortable with.
Yeah, it's
the
perfectly
power.
fine. I'm
No,
glad.
I'm not mad at him at all. I'm not mad at him at all for it. I'm just saying, I feel like Spider-Man 3 caused him to be overly wary of something of that nature.
Yeah, it's weird. I want my Sam Raimi back. Dang it.
Yeah. So let me ask you, because I actually thought of this question, and this seems the right time to ask it. If Sam Raimi had his way, do you think he would have made a good Warcraft movie?
Hell yeah.
I think so, because if you look at it, if he approaches it the way he approaches Spider-Man, which it's hard to say that he would for me, because he approached Spider-Man with a lot of love and respect. I don't think he could have understood. I mean, he could draw upon that, but I don't think he really understood what he was handling, what he would be handling with Warcraft. But one thing he does do outside of Spider-Man 3 is he is a man who can restrain himself. When he needs to, he can balance that line between doing the Hollywood thing and doing the Sam Raimi thing, and it comes out as a fuller version of whatever you want him to do.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. Yeah,
I don't. I'm worried that in the strain of things that he's made since Spider-Man 3, that he needs to go on a walkabout.
Well, I mean, he's basically stepped away from directing. He does a lot more writing and executive producing.
He did direct the first episode of Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I watched it with my critical eye. Sam Raimi doesn't start directing the episode until 34 minutes in.
Right. Sure.
The first 30 minutes is standard Hollywood shots, standard framing, standard movement, nothing surprising, nothing that me with just a mass communications degree couldn't set up and shoot a camera at. There's no creativity. It's just sitting the camera down, let the actors act, cut to the other person, let them say their line. Just very standard status quo cinematography. And then 34 minutes in, the evil shows up for the second time in the show, and he becomes Sam Raimi again. And I loved it. And then none of the other episodes are directed by him. And I feel like I'm watching the Sam Raimi version of the TV show Supernatural. It's not bad. It's watchable. It's something you watch when you get home from work and you just want to watch somebody get their ass kicked. But it's not the Sam Raimi that I love. It's someone else handling Sam Raimi's ideas, but not in the way that, say, Edgar Wright would do, where you can see him paying homage and being respectful and setting up shots in the same way that if Sam Raimi was there, you couldn't tell the difference. Which, I forgot what movie it was, but Sam Raimi actually did ask Edgar Wright to take one of the movies away from him. I don't know if it was Spider-Man 4 or what. And Edgar Wright told him, I don't want to do it because it would feel like karaoke. Because even he knows that a lot of his cinematography, he plays off of Sam Raimi's style.
That's a great quote.
Yeah,
Yep.
I thought it was fantastic when Sam Raimi, Edgar, please do this. I don't want to do it because it would feel like karaoke. And I want to see more Sam Raimi because people only got to see the good Sam Raimi basically for Spider-Man. I think he's talented enough to do all kinds of cool stuff, but I guess it's just not in him. And we're talking about a director who got his first success from Stephen King going, this is fantastic, this is the best movie I've seen all year, with Evil Dead.
Right.
And then Evil Dead 2, Peter Jackson sees it and says the exact same thing I said as a child. I want to do this. That's where Peter Jackson enters film, is because he watched Evil Dead 2 and said, Sam Raimi makes me want to make movies because he's having fun.
That explains Peter Jackson's early movie stuff. Okay.
Well,
Yes.
that's,
Which I'm
Peter
not
Jackson,
a fan of, but okay. It
you don't
explains
like
a lot.
the Frighteners?
No, I'm talking about the stuff before the.
Oh, okay. Because I have to say, I personally really enjoy the idea that Peter Jackson's like, let's make the Frighteners, and then he's like, I'll make Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
So-
true.
so now you
that's
have-
an odd jump.
Now you know why Peter Jackson's early films are what they are.
True. Okay, that explains a lot. Thanks.
So we've covered pretty much the entire filmography. It's hard to get through. Hopefully we can, as we continue to make these episodes, figure out how to do that in a more concise manner. I felt as though I rambled a little bit, but it was nerd rambling, so that's forgivable.
That's for good.
Yeah,
That's good.
I know what you're going through because I kind of did a similar thing. I think I didn't really understand what I wanted to do with the Terminator topic until near the end of the episode. I'm like, I shouldn't talk about the movies. I should talk about what they're about.
Yeah, and
No, I think what's relatable too is what it means to you, what impact it had on you.
he made me want to point cameras at things because
Right.
I love the way he pointed cameras at things. Thank you,
Exactly.
Sam Raimi.
Exactly, and that's the more impact it had on James rather than this is movie 1, this is movie 2. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Sam Raimi, it's been fun watching him make movies all my life. He has a flavorful filmography. I hope that if at least one person watches a movie that they didn't know about or didn't expect to see, and they see the love I have for Sam Raimi, then my job is complete.
Or at least get through the first 20 minutes of it.
Oh,
But those movies are
Look.
antiquated.
yeah, they are.
It's fine. That's fine. I can see the appeal it has. I see how it can create, to want of a better phrase, a cult following.
Yes.
That is exactly that style of movie. There's a certain style that appeals to a certain group of people, and yes, I can see how they would become passionate about it.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
consider at the time, you haven't really had that before.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
he's
yeah.
rather
No,
revolutionary
absolutely.
at the time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And
Okay.
if I wanted to keep it, if I didn't want to carry on forever, I would talk about movies like The Haunting, which is the closest I ever got to seeing Sam Raimi before Sam Raimi. It's an old black and white movie made in the 60s, and it has a lot of that stuff that it's a film that not many people know about outside of the remake that sucked. Don't go see that. But yeah, I would talk about a lot of that stuff because there's so much depth and history to his style and the things he liked that I can't cover in a single podcast. I do know that Evil Dead 2, there was a professor that made an entire semester out of deconstructing Evil Dead 2. So I know, yeah, I know that there is the depth there to see, but I don't want to gush about it so much that it becomes boring. So, if you liked what you heard,
Can I just jump in? Sorry, mate. I just want to do a final thing about in wrapping up. It's on a more personal note.
Okay.
In doing this research about Sam Raimi, you discover that he also is an involved writer, likes to... he's been involved in numerous movies and projects where he's been a writer or at least a co-writer. So I discovered that he co-wrote early on the movie The Hudsucker Proxy. The Hudsucker Proxy is the very first movie that my wife Claire and I went to when we were dating. And in part, very small part, I'll give him this, in a very small part was possibly a reason why Claire and I never may not have continued on our relationship, because we saw the Hudsucker Proxy, and if you've never seen the Hudsucker Proxy, jump on YouTube, watch the trailer real quick. It gives you a very clear idea of a very quirky comedy starring Tim Robbins and Robert Redford. And we walked out of that movie, and Claire had this serious WTF look on her face, wondering what the hell had I just taken her to. And whenever we talk about bad movies, she always refers back to the Hudsucker Proxy. So, he may have closely played a small part into a reason why Claire and I never came together, but we did. So we'll just let that ride. We'll let it ride.
In spite of him.
In spite of, there you go. In spite of Sam Raimi, Claire and I are still together. There you go.
Nice. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.
So, the Hudsucker Proxy, 1994.
Hudsucker.
Okay.
Yep.
I've never even heard of it, so I'll check that out.
That's all right. Not many people have.
No, I've heard Claire talk to me about this movie. Okay, she was not thrilled.
No.
Oh man. Well, that's episode 3 down, right?
Yep.
Next week, hopefully, will be Ricky. If not, I will put a sock on my hand and pretend it's Ricky, and I will speak for him. He will be doing Batman Arkham video game series. So our first dedicated video game episode. I'm excited for that because I think it's nice to branch out, and eventually we'll have literature, which will be cool. If you liked what you heard, we're on SoundCloud, N1's Ken, INONESKEN. We're on iTunes. If you hear us on iTunes, make sure you give us a 5-star review, please. It helps us out a lot. Do we have any 5 stars?
We have one from the US iTunes store. It's from Kiwi Magic. Left us a 5-star review. I won't say whether she's closely related at all to the Kiwi mage from New Zealand, but we appreciate the 5-star review. Absolutely.
Wow. Yay, self-referencing. Yay. So we're on Facebook at facebook.com/. In One's Kin, no spaces, no apostrophe. We may be on Twitch one day. It's been an idea that if we do more of these video game segments, that during our research we will possibly live stream them while we're doing our research. So that sounds fun. If you enjoyed it, thank you. If you learned anything, we're happy for it. See you next week. Bye-bye.